Um, the um, the thing about it is, which that's kind of a common occurrence. But I remember um, I could account for the time while I was flatlined. I knew everything that happened that was said. And I remember there even being other people in the room that shouldn't have been there. They weren't dressed up in medical clothing or didn't even look like they're from this time period. Um, I can remember, and it kind of freaked everyone out when there was 6 years old, and I was describing in detail, them. It was the fourth time that they tried resuscitating me that they finally got my heart going again. Um, and describing that, and the doctor after the third time didn't work, um, saying, it, we've lost him, and the nurse saying, no, I know his family, we can't, let's try one more time. Um, the that whole experience was what made me think, okay, there's a lot out there that I don't know. And I mean, even though I was extremely young, that sparked my curiosity. And from then on, it affected me. I remember being in second, third grade, all the other kids are reading Clifford the Big Red Dog and um, all this stuff. And I'm reading Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and Mysteries of Easter Island and Bermuda Triangle and UFOs. And um,
And fake
that's kind of how
magazines.
it, absolutely. Um, they that's how it all kind of started. Um, when I got a little older, when I got to be about 15, I started really researching more into it. I remember I was 15 years old when I read ESP Hauntings and Poltergeist by Lloyd Auerbach.
Fantastic
That
book.
that book is, if you have not read that book, then right after this show is over, order that book. Don't even get up from the computer. If you're listening at the computer, go ahead. If you're listening on your phone, go ahead and type it in there. But get ESP Hauntings and Poltergeist by Lloyd Auerbach. That when But because even at that young of an age, there were a lot of things I just didn't believe very easily. And I remember being 15, reading that book, and it's like, whoa, this clicks. Because I always loved science, I always had that fascination, and here it was. Finally, something was making the two start to kind of connect. And so after that, I started reading every kind of book I could get my hands on, by Michael Persinger, Barry Taff, by Lloyd Auerbach, by William Roll, all these amazing authors that have done so much work and that sadly a lot of people aren't familiar with. Um, and I did that for several years. I read and studied the heck out of it, but it never went out and investigated. Till finally, when I was 21, I remember going out, and that was my first investigation. And I'm thankful at the time that me and my buddies that went out with me, when we decided we were gonna have our little team. I'm kind of thankful that back in those days that camcorders were so ridiculously expensive that we couldn't afford one yet. Because I can remember we're walking through this cemetery. I was terrified. I'm not gonna lie. There I was, just young, dumb kid. Didn't know what I was doing. Never done an investigation before. Didn't know what to expect. Walking through the middle of the cemetery at night with my little micro cassette recorder I picked up for $20 at Radio Shack, and I remember something caught my attention, and when it did, I turned around really fast, and I felt claws all of a sudden going down my back. And I just knew at that moment, I thought, well, so this is how I die. I'm here in the middle of the graveyard. That's where they're going to find me. I thought somebody done came up and got me. So I spun around really fast and to, try and see what it was that was killing me before I died, I guess. Um, and when I did, I tripped over, it was so funny. I tripped over a tombstone that was behind me, just about did a somersault, came within a few inches of cracking my head open on the tombstone behind that, all because this demon, as I thought it was at the time, turned out to be just a dogwood tree with a low hanging limb. So there's this whole,
I'm sorry, that
you know,
visual is just
oh yeah,
fantastic because I can't imagine you reacting like that now.
I know that's the thing is, that I definitely didn't start off being this calm and collected and I'm just so thankful that nobody has that on video. Um, but I remember though, after that whole experience, the laughing afterward, we were going back, we're listening to everything that was recorded. And on my little micro cassette recorder, I had one EVP from that night, and it was a male voice that said, "Hey, I'm here." And that was it. 3 words.
Just letting you know.
And when that happened, when first investigation, that's like I say, you know, one EVP, just 3 little words. "Hey, I'm here." And that was all it took. I was hooked, and I've been doing it ever since.
Well, you had your questions answered in that one sentence.
Absolutely. So, I mean, despite, running into having an encounter with a demonic dogwood tree that tried to kill me.
Usually dogwood trees are symbols of good, right? Very
That
rarely
one
will
was
you
pretty
find a demonic dogwood tree.
right. That one tried to kill me.
I see that.
And but yeah, that's one of those things that and I don't think had that been my second or third investigation or whatever, I don't think that experience would have stuck with me as much. But that being the first time I ever went out and done it, I think that really just ingrained it that much more into my brain.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's no way that it could not have done that. The first time I was ever leading an investigation, I got my very first ever Class A EVP too. But it
Hmm.
wasn't that cool. It was just, I was trying to work a camcorder because I had just gotten it and had no idea exactly what I was doing. And it
Hmm.
was all women on the site, and it was a man who said, "So, are we recording now?" And it was just like, what the heck? So, I was already interested, but that's fascinating because that truly was your answer to the whole reason that you were even there.
Hmm.
That's so cool.
And and it's like I say, that was all it took, and here it is, 19 years later, and you know I'm still doing it and still just as curious. But it's funny. The more that I learn, the more I realize that I don't know.
True.
Um, but a very smart person one time said that the way that you're doing proper research is not finding the right answers, but asking the right questions.
True.
And I think that's what we have to do is we have to make sure that we are asking the right questions. Like I was saying earlier, the paranormal has a lot more to do with living people than it does dead people. I mean, by just a ridiculous margin. And we have to ask ourselves, not, you know, are ghosts just dead people that are lingering around? But maybe ask, how is that possible for human consciousness to stick around after the body dies? How is a living person capable of imprinting a moment of their life into their environment so strongly that 50, 100, 200 years later it still replays in time? That's kind of the way that we have to look at it. And, don't be afraid to challenge the old ideas, the old beliefs and superstitions. And, a lot of the things that we encounter in the paranormal are purely from old superstitions that predate, this millennium, or the last millennium, I should say. So, we have to be willing to question everything.
And yet, people are so willing not to do that. And it's giving up your ideas. It's not allowing what matters to you to come through. And
right.
I think that's tragic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, when you pick a set ideology that you refuse to accept anything outside of, all you're doing is you're putting yourself into a box and limiting yourself. You have to think about it. What if nobody ever said, wonder if the earth really is flat?
Right.
Or what if nobody ever asked the question, are we really the center of the universe?
Well, I don't know about you, but, but I'm teasing.
Right. Right. That, there's still a lot of people out there that kind of, that, think that they're the center of the universe involves them, and they're not talking about the planet that they're on.
I know.
But that's the thing is, look at how many things that we encounter on a daily basis that we just take for granted that we wouldn't have if no one had ever questioned it. No one had ever been willing to think outside that box and say, I don't think this is right. You have to consider, it hasn't been but just, barely about 150 years ago that if you had leukemia, if you had epilepsy, anything that triggered a seizure, that when you went into that seizure, you didn't go to a doctor. You went to a priest to get an exorcism because obviously it was a demon possessing your body. Well, if nobody had ever challenged that.
Well, there's some parts of the country that I would say very few people do challenge that.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the results of that, which are tragic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
I just think
yes,
tragedy.
Yeah, that really is a dangerous mindset to get into, where we're not willing to accept any new ideas, anything that challenges our current beliefs. And it doesn't matter if you're science, politics, paranormal, diet, exercise routine, anything you want to talk about. That's a terrible mindset to have, and you know,